It's a life and death battle against the Alaskan wilderness.
I gave myself a 5% chance of survival.
Surrounded by predators.
There was this massive bear.
Facing an outdoorsman's worst-case scenario.
We're in the middle of nowhere.
Stranded without shelter and with no way to reach help.
So I knew I had to hold on for at least a week before they would even miss us.
The will to live and an unwavering faith are his only survival weapons. In the wild, when things go bad, they go bad fast. Without warning, your life can hang by a thread. Adventurer and survivor Craig DeMartino fought back from his own wilderness disaster to reclaim his life. Now Craig meets other courageous outdoorsmen who beat the odds and return from their own fight to survive.
Hi, I'm Craig DeMartino. Some say that hunting and fishing in Alaska is the best in the world. Definitely some of the most challenging. Two friends left this harbor in Ketchikan, headed to the Misty Fjords region of southern Alaska. They were on a hunt for moose and grizzly. What they found tested the very limits of a man's ability to survive the wild.
Survival in Alaska is all about taming the extremes. The brutal weather, the predatory wildlife, the severe terrain. Each could easily kill anyone unprepared for the challenge. But it's those same dramatic qualities that make Alaska such an attraction for outdoorsmen. That's exactly what hooked 51-year-old Adrian Knopps on his first trip to Alaska from Michigan nearly 6 years ago.
I just couldn't get enough of the wildlife, the scenery, the mountains. The first trip was an eye-opener for me, and it kind of got it in my blood where I fell in love with it. You just love to be here, is the feeling that you get.
Adrian had traveled to join his friend, an Alaskan native, Garrett Hagen, for some fishing and hunting. They had met in Michigan, where Garrett's stories intrigued Adrian.
He loved to talk about his life of fishing and hunting in Alaska, and who doesn't want to hear that, who's an outdoors person?
Anything out here? Any moment now. No? Okay.
Garrett's father fished for a living, and Garrett practically grew up on his dad's boat.
I knew he was going to be a fisherman. We're a fishing family. I'm a commercial fisherman. He would fish with me all day long, work hard, and then at nighttime we'd anchor up. He'd put a line over the side and see what he could pull up off the bottom. He just had to know what was on the bottom, wherever he was at.
Garrett had bought his own boat, a 50-footer named Abundance.
He took a real interest in his boat. It was something he really liked. I think it meant it could probably maybe someday start a family and live on the boat even.
Season after season, Garrett and Adrian managed to get together, either in Michigan or in Alaska, for a couple weeks of hunting or fishing.
I can honestly say that Garrett was my best friend.
In the fall of 2013, Adrian flew up to Ketchikan, Alaska. This trip, he and Garrett were going on a moose hunt.
I had never seen the Misty Fjords, and Garrett had never seen the Misty Fjords, and he was very excited about this trip.
Garrett and his dad prepped the Abundance. The plan was to leave Ketchikan on Friday, September 13th.
Be careful. Don't forget a big moose. Will do, yeah. See you when you get back. Yeah. Wish I was going with you.
Garrett told his family not to expect them back until the following Sunday,
See you in about a week.
September 22nd.
He was all excited, and the last thing I remember seeing my boy is he was heading out the bay. He gave me a wave, and I gave him a wave. Have a good trip. And I seen him sitting at the steering wheel, just standing there looking ahead. Goodbye, you know.
We left Ketchikan and headed south. And we were going to spend 2 days, the Friday and Saturday, exploring the fjords as we worked our way up toward the Chickaman River. I pretty much stood on the bow of his boat or on the back all day long in awe of the Misty Fjords. I mean, they're almost straight vertical rock cliff, 1,000, 2,000 feet high. I don't know how high they are, but you feel very small looking up at them in that area.
The next day, they reached the mouth of the Chickaman River and dropped anchor. Their plan was to go ashore in a small motorized skiff and scout the mudflats and tree line for signs of game.
We didn't find any moose tracks, but we weren't really up the river to where they would be anyway. So we figured we'd go back to the boat, have a good meal, get some sleep, make a plan, wake up, and continue on.
The Chickaman River is fed by active glacier melt. The water is frigid and so thick with silt that you could hardly see a paddle blade just beneath the surface. When the tide rushed in, it raised the water level nearly 20 feet. On Sunday, the two set out from the Abundance, hoping to return that evening with some fresh game.
Pretty nice day, huh? And you don't get much nicer day than this. Already a fun trip, man. You've already got.
We motored that little skiff all the way up the Chickaman River. We got back in between the mountains and we kept motoring up, and we were probably up into the mountain area a mile or two, and we noticed a little lagoon off the side of the river, which generally indicates a stream entry, and so we pulled into there.
Well, Garrett, this is just paradise up here. It's beautiful, isn't it? It is wonderful.
So we got out and we made our way up through the brush and found the stream. And it opened up into the beautiful, typical Alaskan rocky stream trickling down the mountain. So we went in, we started scouting out. We found bear tracks, we found deer tracks, we found a lot of wolf tracks.
That's a big bear.
Grizzlies in this part of Alaska can stand 9 feet tall. And the wolves? They can sprint 40 feet in a second. The tracks told them both of these deadly predators were in the vicinity.
We just waited up there for maybe upwards of an hour. Nothing really happened. And so we figured, hey, let's keep moving on. So we moseyed on back down the stream, walking out real slow. And we turned the last corner before going out to the boats. And Garrett just started just bubbling over with, look at that. He's pointing and really excited. And I came around the corner and looked, and there was this massive bear standing upright, facing us. Whoa, and he pulls up to shoot it. And I was like, Garrett, don't do that. That's a grizzly bear.
They were now face to face with one, feeding on salmon. Out in the Alaska wilderness, it said there is nothing more dangerous than interrupting a grizzly bear in the middle of a meal. And that's what Garrett was just about to do. In Alaska's remote rugged valleys of the Misty Fjords, Adrian Knopps and his buddy Garrett Hagen had run right into a massive grizzly bear. Before it could charge, Garrett quickly aimed his rifle.
So he raised up and he fired 3 shots. And the bear went down under the water, completely submerged.
The wounded bear tried to stagger up to the bank. Garrett aimed again.
Wait,
Don't shoot!
wait till it gets out of the water.
But he shot. He was so excited. Another perfect shot,
Nice shot.
and that bear just, that was it.
It was looking like this was going to be a very successful hunt. There were only 3 days into their 10-day trip, and already they had taken an impressive trophy.
I think you're getting close.
It took us hours to get that bear skinned and quartered and got all the meat off, because Garrett was the one, you don't waste meat. When you hunt, you eat the meat. And so we had a lot of meat.
After taking a break to eat the only meal they had packed,
Oh, we're almost there.
they began the tedious chore of lugging the game bags full of meat down to their small skiff and kayak.
This is heavy. We'll definitely make a couple more trips. We're gonna have to fill this thing up.
You don't have to keep any bear meat in the fall in Alaska, but he was going to keep his meat.
Oh, yeah. Good to be young, Garrett. This hide, we're gonna have to fill up both this and all of that.
We weren't super picky,
Yeah.
but we still got 300 pounds of meat off that bear.
You got this packed in here pretty well.
We finally got the hide down to where the meat was, and we decided to pack all the meat and the hide in the kayak so that it wouldn't be in the little skiff we were in, because that little skiff was rated for 2 guys and really nothing else.
The current was surprisingly strong. The small, overloaded kayak was at risk of capsizing.
Yeah, Garrett, I don't like this. This is riding too low.
The problem is that the water was like that far from over the top of the kayak.
I think we need to transfer this into the skiff.
Yeah.
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 So we ended up putting most of the meat in the boat with us, and just the hide stuffed down into the kayak. And that brought the kayak up more, made it much more stable, and we were good going down the river. The only problem with that is now we had 300 pounds more in the little skiff. And it brought the water up to where it was literally a couple inches from coming over the top.
There was no way that the little skiff could take both men and 300 pounds of bear meat all the way down the river and then across the wide channel out to their anchored fishing boat.
Boats are just riding too low. This is too much bear meat.
I said, Garrett, we can't go out in the big water this way. He agreed.
What do you say to this for a plan?
We came up with the idea, hey,
What if
I'll get
stay
out of the
here
boat.
with the guns?
Yeah,
That'll lessen the weight in the boat, make it ride up higher.
that's a great idea.
Tie up to the boat, throw the meat on, tie the kayak off. We agreed that he wouldn't try to do anything with the hide, just tie it up and leave it.
You come back, right back for me.
Turn right around and get you.
That sounds good.
Yep.
We'll do that.
And then we'd be at the boat. That was the plan. Now I wish we had made a different plan.
Garrett dropped Adrian off at the edge of the wide mudflat. He held onto Garrett's 2 rifles to further lighten the loaded skiff.
I'll be right back.
Okay.
Garrett motored off. Smile on his face.
Bear, see you in a bit.
Great day, 60 degrees, no wind. Big bear in a boat. Proud as can be. Motoring off toward the boat. And it's a pretty vivid memory just watching him go. And everything was good.
Adrian watched Garrett travel the half-mile or so to the Abundance, receding into a tiny speck on the horizon. He waited, but as the tide began to return and lap at his ankles, he grew concerned.
After about a half an hour, he's not coming back. So I pulled up one of the rifles and scoped the boat out to get a closer look, and there wasn't anything there. I couldn't see the skiffs, and I couldn't see him. I couldn't see movement on the deck. And at that point, I knew that there was something wrong.
But that was just one problem. Adrian was now stranded on the mudflat. The tide was coming in, and it was getting dark. He had to head for safer ground. But in the heart of grizzly country, where would that be? A successful hunting day for 2 best friends
See you in a bit.
had turned into a nightmare. Garrett was nowhere in sight, and Adrian was stranded without a boat or shelter in the Alaskan wilderness.
I waited. Throughout the next half an hour, I kept scoping out the boat, trying to spot something. But I never spotted anything. There was no movement. I didn't see any boats, I didn't see him. No lights on deck because it was starting to get dusk at the time. The boat was just there, anchored in the water, dead in the water, so. After about an hour, I knew he had died. I just knew that he was gone.
Had the swift current taken down the skiff? Had Garrett fallen, loading the meat onto the boat? Adrian could only wonder.
At that time, having a close relationship with my God, Jehovah, I started praying at that moment.
Oh, please, Jehovah, please pay attention to what is happening here.
Just left it open. He was out loud all the
I
time,
know that something has happened to Garrett.
like he was standing there with
I
me.
ask that your spirit watch over his situation.
And I needed to keep calm,
I know that you are looking on. Please give him the help that he needs.
which I did. It was almost surreal.
Praying out
Jesus'
loud
name,
helped
I
Adrian to
pray.
focus
Amen.
and to figure out his next move. Craig DeMartino went with Adrian back to that mudflat on the Chickaman River.
it, huh?
Yeah.
Back to the spot where he last saw his friend.
The abundance is there.
Yeah, it's out there. And that evening, he dropped me off out there in the little skiff before he went out to the abundance.
I mean, do you still think about that?
I can see it like it's happening right now.
Yeah.
I can see him taking his little boat and his new little motor and just putting along out there toward the abundance. And I waited for a half hour and then he'd come back in an hour. Then I pretty much knew it was over, but I gave him another hour and it was almost dark. I never got to see it. But then the water was coming in around my feet and I had to move.
The race was on to reach a downed tree before the water got too deep and swept him away.
The tide's coming in, and throughout the tidal flat, there's these cuts that go through it. They make these little channels. And at low tide, there's no problem, but when the tide's coming in, they're filling up. Before I got up to the higher spot where I was headed, there was a big one, and the tide had come in enough to where I was wading to my chest. Guns above my head, going through this icy water. Finally made it up to this knoll, and to my relief, there was, on the top of it, there was an area of grass that was standing. And I'm like, oh, standing grass. No tides up here. Because there was some grass down below, but it was all matted down, like the water had been over it. So I said, this is where I'm gonna stay tonight. I mean, it was getting dark.
But Adrian couldn't be sure that this incoming tide wouldn't inundate the tree.
I sat up there and the tide was still coming in.
Adrian saw the tide getting closer, but there was no other place he could go. He was trapped. Luckily, it stopped not far from the tree and left him a little island of dry ground.
And so I broke off some branches from other trees in the area and got a little pile of firewood. In my little fanny pack, I carry 3 ways to start a fire. My preferred way is steel wool and a 9-volt battery. It was probably the typical beautiful, pristine, Alaskan clear night. Stars in the sky.
But that heavenly spectacle wouldn't last long. Soon those stars disappeared behind heavy storm clouds, and that one fire and that one dry night on the Chickaman would be Adrian's last. Adrian Knopps was stranded alone on a mudflat in a remote corner of southeast Alaska without any shelter and little food. Even worse, no one would be looking for Adrian or his hunting partner Garrett for at least a week. They had told their families that they would be out hunting for about 10 days. This was just the 3rd day of their trip. That night, Adrian had a private memorial for his friend, which he shared with Craig.
The first night you're here and you made a memorial for Garrett.
I was just going through every good thing I liked about Garrett.
Allow me to tell all that can hear tonight that Garrett is your friend. He has served you faithfully all his life, and he is my best friend.
Showed my appreciation for him the best I could. Made sure to ask God many, many times to remember him.
What a wonderful young man he proved to be, and I beg that you remember him in the resurrection that your son Jesus talked about when he was here on earth.
I wanted the valley to hear. Maybe that's why the wolves stayed away from here, I don't know. And that brought me some comfort, a lot of comfort. I didn't have to concentrate on what just happened. It's not like I forgot it, obviously.
Right.
It was a focus all the time, but it wasn't dominant. It didn't dominate me. And yeah, I could move on. And after that time, I started devising what I needed to do, you know?
The next morning, Adrian took stock of his situation.
And I started making plans, what I had to do. We had just started the hunt. The family was told we were going to start at the Chickaman River. We'd be back there for over a week, and they weren't expecting us home until the next Sunday, and this was Sunday. So I knew I had to hold on for at least a week before they would even miss us. I told myself, this is possible. I looked in my little fanny pack and I had 4 oat bars. That was the only food I had. So I labeled them mentally. I said, there's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I said the last 3 days I can get by 3 days with no food.
The tide had receded, and Adrian took a walk to survey the boundaries of his solitary confinement. To one side, he was trapped by the wide, swift Chickaman River. On his other side, and behind him, dense trees, high cliffs, and predators.
The tree line was full of wolf and bear tracks. And it's only about 20 yards of trees before it goes straight vertical cliff walls in that valley. So there's not much room for the animals, and if I went and inserted myself into their area, I'd just be fighting animals all night long.
Adrian had no choice but to return to the isolated tree on the mudflat.
I started going back before the tides came in, and it just started raining a little bit harder. It wasn't a mist anymore, it was a steady rain.
That steady rain rapidly grew into a powerful, relentless storm. Temperatures plunged, and brutal weather battered Adrian. Lashed by high winds and driving rain, Adrian prayed for the strength to survive. But with each cycle, the tides rose and threatened to wash away Adrian's only refuge from the deadly cold waters.
Stranded and alone on the most unforgiving terrain, and knowing no one was looking for him, Adrian knew he had to stay focused and use every resource within him to continue to survive. Find out how on the next Fight to Survive.